So hello today for the Better Minneapolis podcast. I've invited two guests that were attendees at the recent events hosted by the Uptown Association. And they're here to really talk about what's going on in Uptown and what it's like to run a business there and things that they're seeing. So I'll just let you introduce yourselves. Maybe you could start, Zach.
Hey, Terry. My name is Zach Pettus, and my wife and I own CycleBar in the Uptown neighborhood.
Great.
My name's Ikeda. I own Lake Irving restaurant on the corner of Lake Irving.
Okay. So let's start with you, Chris. How long have you been, is this your first restaurant, I guess?
It is. I have two now, but I opened Lake Irving towards the latter half of 2013.
Okay.
So I've had kind of a unique perspective on kind of Uptown in general. So.
Okay. Great. And how long have you been in the neighborhood, Zach?
We'll be celebrating 9 years this summer.
Okay.
So.
Good.
Summer 2016, we kicked off the first location.
And just curious, like when, what was Uptown like when you moved in, and maybe a little background on why you chose the neighborhood or the area that you did?
Uptown at that time was an amazing place. My wife and I lived for 8 years at Colfax and kind of by the Greenway, and chose the area based on a bunch of market research about our target demographic. We had an analyst, and we were looking at some suburban spots, and we looked at downtown, and we looked at Uptown, and we picked the spot we did just based on the current retail mix. We knew about some of the residential development that was coming in, so the density was going to grow. And, you know, at the time, with the vibrancy of Hennepin Avenue, the vacancies we see today were, you know, non-existent. And so a mix of kind of neighborhood density and the types of retail tenants. And we also wanted to bring something unique to that part of the city. That Minneapolis is my hometown, so I grew up here, and we wanted to kind of have a value add for the southern part of the city. Opening up downtown just didn't make sense. Some of the costs, but also, you know, Lifetime's right there. And
right.
So those are kind of some of the key reasons.
How about you, Chris?
Yeah, when we first moved to Uptown, or opened up in 2013, I think that was kind of, you know, the tail end of the golden age of Uptown. Mm-hmm. It definitely, you know, you still had Stella's, you still had Uptown Tavern, you had the Uptown Theater in its previous version, just really vibrant, and, you know, Lucia's and all the fun stuff. And then, you know, the subsequent slide kind of started happening in maybe 2018. And then that's kind of when it started to change. I originally picked the location kind of similar to Zach. I fell in love with the area. There weren't a lot of other areas in the city that I thought I wanted to be a part of. Like, mm-hmm. I just felt the vibe of Uptown. It's an eclectic mix of people. It's proximity to the lakes, and just like, yeah, the overall vibrancy in the area at that time. Like, it was what North Loop is now. So
right. Well, it's funny because my wife and I moved here in 2006, and we originally rented an apartment right across from the lake, from Uptown, or from what was at the time Lake Calhoun, and we thought, oh, this is great. And we were moving here from the East Coast, and we were like, oh, there's tons of energy here and stuff. But we had a baby at the time, and it actually turned out to be a little bit too much energy, because our next door neighbor was like a bartender at, I don't think it's even there anymore, but it was called like Fly or something downtown. And Barfly, yeah. And it opened at midnight. That's like basically when his shift started.
Right.
So he was doing his pre-DJ warm-up at 10:30 as we were trying to get to bed. So that was our first experience with Uptown. So you mentioned demographics, which I think is interesting because that was brought up in the the second Uptown Association meeting and just kind of comparing Uptown to some of the other places like Minnetonka, and them feeling like the people are still in Uptown, and that there's no reason, I guess, for businesses not to come to Uptown and be there. They would be supported. Do you feel like those demographics still hold from when you did the first analysis, or have the demographics changed, do you think?
I think they still hold, and I think they probably are in the middle of getting slightly better. I think, they built the new apartment building on the old Chicago site next to the Metro Transit station. They built all those units right on Lake, across the street from the liquor store, in the old Arby's spot. They built up on that Daymark, obviously. They built up that spot on the north side of the lake where the BP gas station used to be, which is just 2 minutes from Chris's restaurant and our fitness studio. So I think the population is growing. With the fallout from George Floyd's murder, when Winston Smith happened Winston Smith's death, don't mean to downplay that at all. At the time was Calhoun Square, and a bunch of national brands. These decisions get made for Victoria's Secret, Apple, MAC, the makeup store. These are not local people. It's somebody in a corporate office in charge of a real estate department, and they assess things based on risk or perceived risk. And so those of us that are local owners have held out, and even some of the vacancies today that were owned by local people, they stayed open a little bit longer, and I think they'll be the first to rebound. So in terms of the density, in terms of the people that live in a tight radius of the neighborhood, I think all those people are still there, and I think a lot of people in Uptown are excited to support whichever businesses pop up next and take over some of these vacancies. And I think, based on what we're hearing from the mayor and from city council people and so on, we're going to start to see a lot of that change here in 2025.
Yeah, and there already has been some change, right? Like there's a couple places coming in, Muna, and there's...
Yeah, I think it just opened today or tomorrow. It's a great opening.
And there's a few others. There's Queer Mutiny came in, and I think maybe one other coffee shop or something is opening right there. So
and just to pivot off the demographics, I think Zach's right. I think we've maintained a lot of the demographic that has been in Uptown. Where I've seen a decline as a restaurant guy is our destination diners. Those have kind of dissipated over the years. I think that's a combination of perception or reality of crime. Parking has been an issue for people that are driving up from Apple Valley, Eden Prairie. There's not easy access to get into Uptown. Mm-hmm. So those have been some challenges. What we have gained as a restaurant is there are much more vacancies now, in a combination with the urban expansion. Like we're going up, there's more apartments, there's more condos, there's more areas for people to live. So we've gained that market share. So what we lost in terms of people who might not come up here from the burbs or might not make the trek up to the big cities, we've gained that from the 2 mile radius. So
that's good to hear. So basically, like the density that they've been trying to create in the city is helping you think? Has it changed?
I think so.
Like the age of the diners or anything like that?
I think you look at Daymark building, for example. That's literally right next door to our restaurant. That's an entire city block, and I believe they have very high occupancy rate right now. So that was a huge factor in bringing more people to the area, and it's been good. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's the case for other properties throughout the area, but it does seem, in general, there's more people that are deciding to reside in Uptown. So it's been helping.
So one thing I wanted to ask you about with being in the restaurant business, and I was talking to someone else who owns a restaurant yesterday, and they're having a very hard time with the tariffs and things like that, and just trying to predict food costs? And are you experiencing that, or is that still something to come that is still just on your mind?
Yeah, it's definitely not our first rodeo, as like most restaurateurs that went through COVID went through the wild swings in commodity pricing or specialty products, or 1 week avocados are up 100%, and then the next week rice bran oil goes through the roof. So you just kind of learn how to take those bullets and dodge and pivot, get it from another vendor, or switch products. Obviously, we want to keep everything as consistent as possible, so that's the main challenge. But we've also got the margins to protect, which are pretty thin in the restaurant business to begin with. So as far as the tariff stuff, we haven't really seen any of that trickle down to us yet. But, that's kind of changing by the minute, it seems like. So
what right now do you think it would be most helpful for your business when you look 2-3 years out? What's going to, make sure that you're still there?
In terms of level, city level?
They're almost done with the reconstruction. I mean, they've done half the construction on Hennepin, so that's good. And you talk about, there's still a lot of people in the area, so they're still coming out to eat. I'm just wondering if there's anything that you feel would be helpful for. Like, what are the obstacles you think to?
I mean, I could go on for a while, but I think city leadership is a big one. I think just infrastructure developments, like the construction on Lake Street, for example, this last summer absolutely crushed us.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like people talk a lot about Hennepin and they forget that it was going on at the same time as Lake Street.
Yeah, Lake Street. We dodged a major bullet in terms of we still have all 3 lanes of traffic. One of them is dedicated to a bus, which, 24/7 bus lane. And then we still maintained our street parking. So that was crucial. We didn't lose any of that. Although you could make the argument that it's a lot more dangerous now because you're parallel parking on the street and your passengers are opening their door to get out into Lake Street traffic. It doesn't make much sense for a bike lane that's not utilized for 2 blocks when we have the bike highway just 1 block north of that. It's a greenway. So I just, most of the business owners in the area are savvy enough to understand that we need to make infrastructure changes, right? We have to upgrade utilities. We have to keep the pipes, new plumbing and everything, electricity. What we don't understand is how that surface design comes about, and that truly impacts business. We understand the construction piece of it has to happen, but what doesn't help is the lack of communication, and then just ramming through city planning ideas that maybe I don't think they're advantageous for business owners. They're just not.
So just to make sure I'm understanding you right, and I feel like I've heard this from other people, that the design of the streets and roads and stuff can feel like a bit of a surprise, or at least how to have your voice heard in the process isn't clear.
I mean, they do outreach, but then they don't take any of that into consideration. So, for example, the design on Hennepin, I think there was over 300, 400 business signatures that opposed it or wanted a different variation of it. And they pretended like they collected all that information and analyzed it very closely, and then ended up just ramming through whatever they wanted. Right. So now we got 1 lane going both ways down Hennepin, which I personally don't think is a great idea. And then you removed a large chunk of public street parking, which prevents people from outside of Minneapolis being able to visit the area. There's only so much to go around, so much piece of the pie for people that live in the area, right? We can go up and get more density, but at the end of the day, like, the people within just a 4-block radius of Lake Irving aren't going to be able to help me sustain the business.
Right. So what have you experienced, Zach? Has the density helped you? I mean, are more people coming into the CycleBar, or do they drive in and park? Do they walk?
Yeah, we feel fortunate that we've been able to hold steady through this kind of tough stretch for the neighborhood. And there's obviously a lot less vehicle traffic, and Hennepin Lake used to be the busiest intersection in the whole state. And because of the vacancies, there just isn't as much traffic. We're fortunate. We've got people driving in from Edina and St. Louis Park and Richfield to ride with us. And then a ton of the real lion's share of our membership base is in the city in a tight radius and can walk if they want, or have a short drive under a mile. So I think kind of because of the community we've built, and because of the kind of, frankly, the quality of our instructors, which is all thanks to my wife, Jean, we've been able to hold on to pretty much all of our existing membership before the construction, except for people in like Loring Park, downtown West, because their main access point was Hennepin. And so when the city council jammed that through, that really choked out a percentage of our business, and that hurt. But I'm fully confident that when this construction project's done, I think there'll be an opportunity once the guts of the street are, like the water main and everything under the pavement surface is complete and it's ready for another 50 years of being a functional street, how it's painted on top can be changed.
Right.
And so I think there's a lot of input and effort going on in the city right now to see what type of common sense solutions or even corrections can be made from this disaster of a Hennepin Avenue project. So trying to stay positive there. And then also I think there's a lot of people paying attention to the parking options around whatever happens with the 7 Points ramp, alternative solutions along Lake Street. Currently we've got a great partnership with the walkway ramp. And so, we carved out a special deal for people who are riding in our studio to get a private rate. So it's really accessible now as is. And, if kind of things change with how it's painted on the surface, that'll add some street parking probably a year from now. So, but I agree with Chris that creative solutions to improve parking is kind of the number one thing. And then it just kind of goes without saying, if the city can create some incentives for some small businesses to come in and occupy these vacancies, then that'll be the main piece of the revival of the neighborhood.
So Mayor Fry showed up at the second Uptown meeting, and he talked a little bit about Uptown. Do you feel like, those meetings helped the area and the business owners and stuff show city administration how important these issues are? Do you think that people are listening downtown more than maybe they were before?
I think that there is more interest and energy and support around organizing to improve Uptown than I've seen since we opened 9 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
And I've been at all of those meetings just as you have, Terry. And I know Chris has been there too. And it's just, as a business owner who's, so passionate about the neighborhood and lived there forever, I'm just so excited about having everybody's voice be heard. I know caucus was 2 days ago. They were overwhelming in attendance numbers, which is great. I know that there's already efforts at City Hall especially the mayor's office, to figure out how to get small businesses to come into some of these vacancies in that area right between. He's on Girard, I'm on Girard, he's on Irving, and in between is that main intersection. So I think before the holidays, we're going to have a lot of reasons for hope, because I think there's going to be not only some new storefronts, but also announcements of the storefronts to come, 12 months from now.
Yeah, let's touch on that a bit. So one of the things that Andrea Corbin of We Love Minneapolis brought up at the meeting is that they would really like to get 30 or 40 businesses to come in on, that's kind of a goal that they're trying to bring in. And I can certainly see how you create, you want foot traffic and you need more businesses to create foot traffic, and then when the businesses leave, then you have less foot traffic and it gets harder. So I really hope that's successful. And part of that strategy is and I've heard a number of candidates want this too, is a business improvement district. So I'm curious to hear from both of you, like, what is that the solution, or is it, what do you think of the value of the business improvement district?
So I'll preface my answer, full disclosure, I sit on the board of We Love Minneapolis and work side by side with Andrea on a lot of these issues. This project is a good idea as a supplement to a more important safety effort, in my opinion. And just speaking from my own stance and not on behalf of any organization, CycleBar or We Love Minneapolis, as a business owner, public safety and the role of the police force in improving public safety is the most critical thing that's going to entice businesses to come open up in Uptown, which will create the foot traffic wanted. So that is the top priority, I think, among almost every small business owner in the area, is to empower the police to grow their headcount and be, in some cases, retrained to have more of a street presence. And then to help that effort, having these safety ambassadors or the improvement district, like you're talking about, can be a wonderful presence, particularly with the remaining homeless in the area and connecting them to resources, having some visibility on the street so that there's, we can kind of accelerate the perception of safety. But the reality of public safety won't be where it needs to be until we can kind of grow the headcount of the police force again, and they can have that presence on the beat. And when that is established, then people like us will be enticed to bring their brands to the neighborhood and sign a lease with a landlord and put up their sign and be part of the revival.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts, Chris? Any opinions on the BID?
I'm all for it. I think it allows a lot more control over, just so everyone kind of understands, currently what we have is Uptown SSD. So that's a special services district. So that is a small, tight-knit group or an area where business owners pay an additional tax into a pool, and then that's utilized for additional services above and beyond what are just the basic city services. So we have our sidewalks cleared for snow removal. We have flowers put on some streetlights. We have signs that say Uptown. They remove graffiti quicker in certain areas. So that's where those monies go to improving a district or an area even more than what are basic city services. The BID would allow the business owners to have more control over how that money is utilized, and I feel like a lot less red tape. Nationally, BIDs are definitely having, becoming more common, and the results are pretty universal across the board that they're successful. So That's what we're trying to achieve. And
so does that mean that the BID hires like a private security force? I mean, is that part of it?
It could be a part of it.
Yeah.
It could be a part of it. I think Zach would probably agree. The last thing that we really want to do is trying to privatize security, right? Security for Minneapolis. I think a basic human right for anybody in Minneapolis is to be able to walk down the street and have safety and security. That's what we pay taxes for. That's probably priority number one. So the last thing that we really want to do is privatize security services for that area. But we're going to do it if no one, nothing is going to stop us at this point in getting safety and security in the area. So is private security off the table? No, it's not. We'll do it if we have to.
So, you mentioned the perception of security, and, the mayor's recently been putting out a lot of facts about shootings and robberies and things being down, that's fantastic. But, I kind of marvel at how much damage like one or two people can do. So as an example, my mother-in-law lives at Kenwood Isles, and they just had, like, in one night, 16 different car windows smashed out. That could be one individual or two.
Sure.
And, then to the city's credit, they brought out a community safety officer and talked about, but all they can really talk about is, like, don't leave valuables in your car, right? And, I do struggle with figuring out, how do you stop that? I mean, it would be good. If there were actual cops walking that sidewalk and keeping those businesses, under surveillance, kind of. But that one incident, I don't know how many people live in that building, hundreds, right? And they're going to be timid now about going out because of that. It's going to
it all comes down to accountability. So if you have someone who discharges a firearm in a public place, someone that carjacks someone that those are all situations where if MPD is involved, they're arrested, and a majority of times sentencing is stayed, or if they're under 18, they basically have immunity, and they aren't going to jail.
Yeah.
And that's a tough situation too, because what do? We throw them in juvie. That system's broken. We throw them in federal prison. Obviously, under 18, they're going to have some problems. So there's not any easy answer to this, but I think accountability is number one.
And when you say accountability, are you by the police? Who are you looking for more accountability from?
Moriarty,
right?
Yeah, I honestly, I think we have to have. There has to be penalties. If you stick a gun in someone's face and take their car, what are the repercussions for that? Most of these kids know if they're under 18, they have diplomatic immunity. They can do whatever they want. And they understand that. The gangs understand that. And I think until that changes, it won't change. MPD can take all the guns off the street they want. But if we're serious about gun control, then when we find someone who is carjacking people or violently assaulting people with a firearm and they're not held accountable, then it's all for nothing. So
right. So how do you feel about your neighborhood there, Zach, and your stretch of the
I think, first of all, it's an urban core, so you're always going to have something. There's no city in America this size that is crime free. There's no utopia where you eliminate all this stuff, and we all, understand some level of risk when we live in the center of a huge metropolis. With that said, I go back to my kind of previous comment about the number of officers. Like, these criminals are, many of them, highly intelligent and understand the dynamics of kind of the cityscape right now, and whether or not they are acutely aware that the number is over 300 head count that we're down on the police force. They're definitely aware that there isn't as much presence, and they know that there's not going to be the likelihood of getting grabbed, getting processed. Even if it's an underage kid, it's a deterrent to get processed and be in the system then. And in many cases, a lot of these carjackings or some of the incidents that have spread into kind of Kenwood Isles neighborhood are not underage people. They just understand that the police presence in the city right now is way down from where it could be. So,
well, those are so there are, I guess, what you would call hot spots, right? And they're trying to put the safety ambassadors in those areas. So hopefully that will help. But I, at least from my perspective, and I'm not in Uptown as much as the two of you are, but it does seem like it's gotten better. I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, it seemed like they were doing, having car rallies in the middle of the intersection and shooting off guns out the window. And I mean, it's to I want to let people know that's not happening anymore.
No,
and I don't know what changed, because it's not because they hired a ton more police officers, but at least that complete sense of lawlessness, I feel like, has stopped. And I don't know why, really, because there's no safety ambassadors, there's no additional police. Things have just sort of calmed down. I mean, would you say that's true?
Yeah, and I don't want to speculate to the specific reasons either, because that's not my expertise. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we're comparing it to the days of when it was Hennepin Lagoon primarily, my recollection, a lot of the donuts and spin outs, and it kind of just took over the street outside of McDonald's and that library there.
I mean, I would read that and I would be like, what the hell is going on? Like, where are the police? I mean, you can't.
Yeah. And look, the stats are the stats. You mentioned the mayor's updates this past week about really every category of crime being down. It's the facts are the facts, which is encouraging, which is why I think we're going to start to see some of these announcements of new business openings in the area coming in the spring and summer, which is great. So,
and we have a farmers market. Do you know much about that? That's coming?
Yeah, good call. It is coming. I believe June, the second Thursday in June is when they're going to kick it off, and it's going to be every week all through the summer and September. So that's going to be a huge ad for the neighborhood. They're going to have live music. The location is the 7 Points kind of alleyway between Lake over to 31st, and they're going to take over that huge vacant parking lot that's adjacent to the ramp and have concerts there each night. There's going to be tons of food trucks. Hopefully Chris will have some presence there because his food's the best, and all these local farmers, and you're going to get produce and you get flowers and you're going to see your neighbors and you're going to be outdoors on a Thursday night supporting.
Oh, that's what night it's Thursday night is the
I think it's a night market, right?
Information I have is Thursday nights starting mid-June, going all summer, once a week.
Yeah.
That sounds great. I'm hoping to have them on as it gets closer to June so they can talk about it too and give some details. I think I'm probably not the only one in wondering, and maybe neither of you know, but like that parking lot that you mentioned, or lot that's been empty next to the parking garage forever. Do you have any idea what's happening with that? Is that...
not in any detail I could report. The rumors are rumors. I do know that 7 Points, which is formerly Calvin Square, they've been...
Do they own it? Is that who the owner is?
They own the lot.
You're talking about the vacant lot? Yeah, they own that.
And that's North Pond, I think, right?
I believe
the company that owns...
Yeah, out of Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah. They've been really connected with the neighborhood associations. Uptown Association obviously is one of the big nonprofits, which is all volunteer-led on the board there. They've been kind of plugged in on ways they can make that area better. I know that 7 Points has volunteered all of that space free of charge to support, this kind of revival of the neighborhood that we're talking about. And so I think that's going to bring a lot of energy back to that intersection every week. And I know a lot of the area residents are going to congregate and have a cold soda or a cold beer and, buy their weekly produce and have something from a food truck for their dinner. And I can't wait to go. My wife and I will be there on day one.
Great.
Yeah.
And then I heard that they're putting some money into Lagoon Theater to update that. Do you hear that as well?
Yeah, I think that's private investors or the people who own the buildings. I don't know much about that either, but off the top of my head, I know about 4 or 5 business workings, like people that are trying to come to the area. So again, to your point earlier about getting 30 businesses, kind of not in one day, obviously, but in a short amount of time, we're trying to fill some of these vacancies because the vacant storefronts just it creates a lot of problems, right? If it looks dead, feels dead, and then you don't have the people actively managing those properties, and so then you get everything else that comes with it. Drug use, homelessness, crime, all just kind of ends up in those areas because there's just nobody there.
Right. So, they feel like nobody's watching, kind of. Mm-hmm. So what another question I have, and I know we're going to wind up here in about 5 minutes, but how does just how do these different areas compete with each other? I mean, in some ways, because it's like, we've heard about what's happening downtown and all the vacancies. And of course, North Loop is doing really well. But Uptown and, say, the Northeast or St. Anthony area, it seems like there's a lot of different areas that are sort of competing for attention and help. I mean, or do you think that's true? Like, does it matter for Uptown how downtown is doing and that kind of thing? Are we carving into each other's business?
Not from my perspective. I mean, frankly, for what we offer, which is a fitness community, our main competition is Lifetime. Mm-hmm. And Lifetime is a giant, and they're good at what they do because they have a little bit of everything. But they're except for those two things downtown, they really focus on the suburbs, I think, right? Yeah, that's kind of my point. I mean, Our community, we are a music-focused indoor cycling studio, and we offer fitness classes 7 days a week, 365, and we have some charitable programming and some social programming, and we do events with our team and our members, and so it's a lot more than just spin classes. But at our core, our business model is creating indoor cycling classes unlike any other. And so the only other place that does a tight rhythm ride with an instructor roster like this, would be Lifetime, but that's not as much of a community feel, and it's not a tight-knit experience between instructors and riders and what you get in that boutique environment. So there isn't anything that I don't worry about other parts of the city or the suburbs necessarily, because I'm just in such a niche industry of what we do.
And I was just talking to someone recently who said they'd met like some of their best friends in a cycle class like that, and the community extends beyond just the cycle class. Like they go out for drinks or dinner or whatever. So they were really happy about that. Yeah,
our instructors are friends with the riders. People, on top of meeting their health and fitness goals, it's the primary social outlet for a lot of people who come to CycleBar.
And so it seems so important now more than ever, with like the times being what they are, to meet in person and have like a sense of community. I mean, that's my perspective.
Yeah. And the people, we've had some competitors that have gone out of business, and we've been fortunate to kind of take care of some of those folks that are looking to replace that sense of community. And I think it's a big part of why we've made it through so much of the struggle with the Uptown neighborhood, is the community that we've built. Mm-hmm. Both my wife Jean and I over the years. We am happy to share, we just got recognized by the top fitness platform in the country as one of the top 5 studios in the nation.
Awesome. Wow, way to go.
The ClassPass Awards for 2024, there's only 5 studios in the country that win, and CycleBar in Uptown is one of those 5. And you can burn calories anywhere, but if you want to be a part of something bigger than yourself, then these communities is how you make it through being an Uptown in these years. So I think what comes next is going to be even better.
And from my perspective, it seems like growing up, like fitness was very trendy, but I would say different fads came along of exercise, but maybe I feel like 20 years ago, let's say, it just seems like fitness became more of a standard in society, where people like just recognize that you do have to do some exercise, whereas before it seemed like it was very much an afterthought. Is that?
Yeah. And I also think, people especially the last 5 years, are constantly looking for social outlets that are not tied to alcohol. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, there's the percentage of people in their 20s that live a sober lifestyle now is much higher than it was 10 years ago. So we have a lot of people that'll, meet their friends at the studio, do a spin class together, and then they'll just hang out in our community space afterwards and accomplish the same, human needs of connection in a fitness space that they would, if they went to a bar and, and had a bunch of wine, I guess.
Well, that's an interesting point. Do you see that in your restaurant? Are people drinking less, or is it changed at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a demographic shift for sure. I mean, I think a lifestyle shift, but like Zach's talking about, I think maybe less alcohol consumption, popularity of Ozempic. Maybe people are eating less as well.
Wow. Okay, I hadn't thought of that one.
It's just another challenge we face in the restaurant business. It never ends, but onward and upward. We just keep going. So,
Good.
Yeah.
So, kind of final round of questions here. Zach, is there anything that you do outside of work in the summer, some hobby or anything that you enjoy?
Well, we have a golden retriever, and so heading to places where we can take them off leash and go on long hikes is kind of one of our favorite things to do. And now as the weather's turning, it's kind of outdoor concert season, which is great. Mm-hmm. And live music is kind of a big part of our lifestyle, and trying to discover new bands or find out where our current favorites or longtime favorites are playing, and trying to pack in as many shows as we can is kind of what we do with our personal time. So
do you travel like to other states, like in the neighborhood, in the region?
Yeah,
where you fly to see a band?
We have flown to see a couple favorite bands before. We actually looked at some tour dates a couple years ago. In the summer, we went to 4 different dates with the same band. My wife and her friends, who all ride at the studio, actually, they flew to Chicago to see a Missy Elliott show. But mostly, I just like supporting. I mean, I'll always be at Surly Fest for those who like hip hop and remember, Rhyme Sayers putting on their huge festival of sound set every year was always a treat. I try to hit First Avenue as much as we can, just because it's a jewel of the city, and sometimes we'll just pop in without knowing who's playing and just roll the dice. We haven't done that in a little while just because things are so hectic, but yeah, supporting the local venues, pretty much everything small format as much as we can, and if it's going to be a big show, it'll be some kind of outdoor festival. But
great. How about you, Chris? And that alarm was meaning we got to end because you got to pick your kids up. But
yeah, I got to.
What do you? I've always heard running a restaurant, the hours are brutal. Is that true?
Brutal.
Or is that just a rumor?
No, it's a lot. You got to be hands on. You got to be in it, and it never really ends. You don't really ever get to turn your phone off. But no, it's fun. I wouldn't do anything else. But yeah, when I do have some free time, generally, I have an 8-year-old, a 12-year-old. I'll spend as much time as I can with them. I'm a basketball nut, big Timberwolves.
So are you going to get some playoff tickets? My son was looking at it today.
Well, hit me up. Let me know. But if we make the playoffs, we'll see. But we
will make it.
Yeah, no, we will. And then live music too. So just like Zach, I love going out, catching shows, and getting out around town, eating out when I can. Although that's kind of hard, but I love checking out other spots. So,
right. So is there any, before we close out, is there any particular topics or questions that you wanted to call out that maybe we didn't cover today?
No, I think as long as people, I know our main focus of today's episode was the Uptown neighborhood. I just hope people stay connected and pay attention to what's coming. And yes, there's been a tough run for the neighborhood, both with the retail closures and some safety problems. And I truly believe those are behind us. And why a big reason I was excited when you asked me to come on today was just to be a part of telling that story. So the last thing I would leave with your viewers or your listeners is for people to make a return trip to Uptown now to see, get a meal at Lake Irving, or come do one of our classes, or hit Landmark for a movie. And more importantly, you're going to see some openings coming in these new storefronts here this year. And when they happen, please show up and support those guys so they can launch and get off the ground. And I think when we talk again in this context, there's going to be a whole different landscape of Uptown.
Great.
Yeah, just pivoting off what he said, I think Uptown's, it's it's been through a lot of ups and downs. If you follow the history of Uptown, it's been through ups and downs its entire cycle. And I'm very encouraged at kind of this wave that we're all riding right now. There's a lot of good people behind trying to make some really solid changes, not just for now, but really long term, and trying to figure out solutions that make sense. So yeah, people who haven't been to Uptown in the last 3 to 5 years, come check
back.
us out, because it's different than it was before, for sure.
Well, Chris, Zach, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Terry.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
Stop.